I never screw the lid or the cap back onto anything tightly. Yes, I know we're like a subculture of like, part of it is the Three Stooges in us, where we just want to see people lift up the pickle jar and then have it spill out. The other is probably there's something that medicine will figure out how to solve that problem. But certainly it's something my wife has had to live with for many years, and I'm here tonight to make a public apology, but not to change my ways. Number 2, when I sleep on a diagonal. I don't sleep on my back, I don't sleep on my front, I don't sleep on my side, I sleep diagonal. Does anybody do that? Does anybody sleep on a diagonal? What is that? It's like, I can't get to sleep unless I feel like I'm part of a tic-tac-toe thing. It's the weirdest thing. Number 3, my father, Frank, who turned 90 3 months ago, and is doing well. I am the offspring of someone who was on the state championship team, Class C basketball in high school, 1939. The St. Mary's Flint basketball team. My dad was on the team. They won the state championship, and I was born of this father. Number 4. When I was 14, I went door-to-door campaigning for Richard Nixon. I have never discussed this publicly until I wrote this book. But I felt that I had to come clean and talk about. I was so opposed to the war in Vietnam, and after Gene McCarthy was run out of the election and Bobby Kennedy was killed, I just couldn't get behind Humphrey. And even though I was only 14, I thought, this guy and Johnson are responsible for this war, and I'm just not going to vote for it, period. And so Nixon said he had a secret plan to end the war. The secret plan was to drop more bombs on Southeast Asia than we did on Germany in all of World War II. But sadly, it went for another 4 years, and I've had to carry the guilt of this with me for a long time. Yes. Number 5. In 5th grade at St. John's Catholic School in Davison, I stole a pagan baby. Now, for those of you who are Catholic, you'll remember that every year the nuns would ask us if we wanted to adopt a pagan baby in a pagan country in the third world. And if you brought $5 in, you would get to name the baby, and then you would get a certificate back with your name on it saying that this was your pagan baby. And even though the baby might have been in Asia or Africa or whatever, we gave them names like Timothy John, Patrick, Robert, whatever. You got to just pick the first name and middle name. And so anyway, so a few months later, the day came where all the certificates came in of all the pagan babies, with all the pagan babies' names on it that we'd named. And I got my pagan baby, everybody got their pagan baby. And at the end of it, Sister Herman, Sister Mary Herman, not that there's anything wrong with that. Sister Mary Herman said, we have one pagan baby here with the name James Timothy. James Timothy. Who's James? Who bought James Timothy? And nobody said. Well, what happened was Patrick Easter, who was in our class, was sick that day, and that was his pagan baby. And I, with a straight face, raised my hand because I thought I'd get into heaven quicker if I had a second pagan baby. And so I raised my hand and said, "That's mine, sister. I bought an extra pagan baby." And I then got their certificate, and I went home and I had 2 certificates on the wall of the 2 pagan babies, even though I knew that I had stolen one of these pagan babies. And I've had to live with that for the rest of my life. Number 6, I never read movie reviews. I don't want to know anything about the movie. I trust my sense of what the story sounds like, who's in it, who directed it. That's enough for me. I just want to see the movie cold. I do not want to know really anything about it. I just want to be hit fresh with it. I just saw Hugo this weekend. I was so glad I hadn't read any reviews. I'm glad that I didn't know the character that Ben Kingsley was playing that really would have kind of taken an edge off it for me. I don't read them, and I don't read my reviews. I don't read reviews of my stuff because I used to. The first reviews for Roger and Me were just incredible, and the New York Times. I remember we were in New York. It was the New York Film Festival. The review was going to come out the next day, but someone told us at the Times. The papers come in around between 11 and midnight at the Times office. The trucks bring it in from the printing plant. So a bunch of us went down and sat across the street in Sardi's restaurant, waiting for the trucks to pull in to see what Vincent Canby of the New York Times would say about Roger and Me. And the trucks pulled up, we ran over, plopped down the 50 cents, and opened it up and read it, and there it said, I think the first sentence or two, something to the effect of, America, we have a brand new Mark Twain, and his name is Michael Moore. And I'm like, no, please don't. It was not. It was over the top what he said. But it was. But I'm reading it though, and of course I'm not feeling it's over the top. I'm like, no, this is very good. I like this. And so I started reading all the reviews, and they were all just really wonderful. And then Pauline Kael wrote a very negative review of the film, and said that things weren't really that bad in Flint. And I was like, I fell apart reading this, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And I knew that I had messed it up because she was a very famous film critic. She wrote for the New Yorker, and she wanted a copy of the movie sent up to her home. She lived in Western Massachusetts, and I told the studio, no, she has to see it in the theater. I don't want her to. She wanted a VHS tape of it. No, she has to see it in the theater. Yes, but Mike, this is Pauline Kael. No. She has to, just like everybody else, she has to see the movie. I was like, who the hell am I? I was like, Pauline Kael. And, but I was like so pure, which is always what's great when you're young, you just have this sort of, whatever that is, they just, what do you call it? I don't know what it's called, but it's why young people didn't vote in last year's election. You have 18-year-olds, right, or 19-year-olds? 20-year-olds, right? They're so pure, it's so honest. They don't suffer fools like we learn to have to do as we get older, right? We have to compromise and try and get along with everybody. But at that age, they're like, President Obama, you said you were going to close Guantanamo. It sounds, Dad! Dad, you said you were going to put the regulations back on Wall Street. Dad! It's like, I'm not voting. Well, then you're going to get screwed, but again, you don't want to lose that, whatever that is, and that youth brings us the outrage. So anyway, so I stopped reading all reviews of my work because I figured that if I was going to accept what the reviewer says in the positive, I'd also have to accept the negative. And I'd rather not accept anything other than my own judgment, my friends and family, and those who live in Traverse City. And then number 7, I have rented no more than 6 DVDs or home videos in my entire life. It's true. I do not like watching movies on a TV screen. I will do it if I have to. But if I can, I try to see it in movie theaters, and I go to way too many movies and spend too much time in the movie theaters, but I've done that all my life, and I believe that a movie is meant to be seen in the dark with strangers on a large screen with a great sound system, and if you're not watching it that way, then it's not really how the creator, the director of it intended it for you to experience it, and you're watching something else. Now we're down to watching it on iPhones. That's not a movie you're watching. Yeah, I don't know what to call it yet. They haven't come up with a name for it, but to me, that's just not a movie. So I just do not, unless it's an old movie, and there's no way you can see it. Then I guess that's a good reason for DVDs and Netflix or whatever. But by and large, I try to see the things I want to see on a screen like this. And finally, number 8, my middle name is Francis. During the time I grew up, that was a rough middle name to have, right? Does anybody remember? Did anybody have that name, Francis? Right? Right? It was either we were a talking mule or it just sounded so, yeah, thank you, girly. It was sounding girly. And there are girls named Frances, which made it worse. So I tried to always avoid, and of course the nuns, they always had to say your whole name and your confirmation name, and so my name was, Michael Francis Moore. Then I got my confirmation name was Michael Francis Thomas Moore, and I picked Thomas because I loved the idea of Thomas More, I guess, getting his head chopped off by anybody. Actually, that thought just ran through my head just now for the first time. What was I thinking in 4th grade that I would want Thomas More as my name? But anyway, so my middle name is Frank. By the time I got to high school, though, and we didn't have Catholic high school, so we had to go to public school, and I just could not go with Francis there. So I just started signing, whenever I turned a paper in or had to sign something in school, I just signed it with my first 2 initials. But unfortunately, my first 2 initials were MF. More. This also did not serve me well. So, but I now say it with pride. It's my dad's name. He's named after Francis of Assisi, who was one of the first environmentalists and a great thinker at a time when this world was coming, or at least the Western world was coming out of the Dark Ages and into a more enlightening time, which leads us to tonight's subject. I'm just going to say a few words here before I do some reading.